Now we're ready to start planting. Before I actually plant anything, I'm just going to take a quick look at the properties of the 2D objects, because there's a couple of things you need to know. Click on planting. So I'm just going to go find a tree. I'm going to use my initial planting, so choose that one. Now what you'll see is underneath the picture of the object you've selected is a properties box. So I'm going to click on this, and there's various properties we can set for our 2D objects. Now it's always best to have these set at the start how we want them, because adjusting them later can cause some problems. So the two main ones we need to see are the solid part of the tree, which you'll see there's a red and white box here, and this is a solid trunk marked on the object. Any ball hitting this part of the object will bounce off. Any ball hitting the rest of the object will use these settings here, which is a density and dampening setting. The density will determine the probability of the ball actually hitting the object, and the dampening the effect when it does, so how much it's going to knock off your distance. So you need to set these sliders to the realistic settings for the particular object you're using. Now most of the stock objects should be set okay, but occasionally they won't be, and you might want different settings anyway, so best to set them before you plant each object the first time. Just check that these settings are how you want them. Well, I wouldn't want the tree difference 5 to 50 for this course, so I would immediately set this to a more manageable sort of range, maybe 10 to 30. I don't want huge trees on this course, so I would set those like that. Click OK and it will set them. The box itself, you can actually click and drag this box and expand or contract the solid part of the object. So I would want the trunk of the tree maybe 2/3 up to be solid. In the stock objects, they tend to just highlight the trunk that you can see and mark that as solid. Well, the trunk carries on up the tree, so I see it's a bit pointless having it completely, the ball can travel through the tree up here when there's going to be a big trunk there. So I tend to have the trunks around 2/3 up the object. Now you can and you will notice some things like grass that don't have a solid. Obviously you want the ball to travel through grass, you don't want it bouncing off it, and this is the all pass through button. If you click this, it will just use these density and dampening settings below, and the box here has disappeared. What you will notice if I turn it back on again, it's defaulted to surround the object, so it's completely wrong now. So if you do accidentally click this and then click it again, you'll create steel trees because the box will be completely surrounding the object, so you'll need to readjust that if you do it by accident. It's quite hard to grab this box actually, you've got to be just spot on or it won't actually grab, but it's just a matter of clicking and holding and dragging to set that. Now the other thing you'll notice, or you may not even notice, there's a tiny little green square flashing away down the bottom here. I'll grab it again. It's very hard to grab. There's no zoom command to help you zoom in and see it, but you see I've got it now. I can let it go over there. This is the planting depth. It's a planting point for the object. So if this is moved up and you plant this tree, anywhere below this mark will be underground. So normally you want this planting depth on the trunk of the tree and at the base of the tree. Now, for most of the stock objects, it should be in the right place, but there's occasionally it isn't, and it'll be set too low, and the trunk will start a little bit higher, and what will happen is you'll get a floating tree if you plant them at that depth. So always best to check first, and especially later on when we're adding custom objects, these things need to be set because they will always default to the bottom of the screen, and the solid part will default to the complete object, so you will need to set these before you start planting. So make sure this planting depth is okay, and make sure this solid box is set how you want before you start. It's much easier if you get it right at the start than if you have to try and adjust it halfway through designing your course. Okay, the last thing on here is the top view. You can pick the graphic it uses for the overhead, which will show in the top cam in the game. They should all be set with a top view, the stock ones. Again, when you add your own, they won't have one, so you'll have to set them. If it just says top in here rather than a name of a file, that's because it hasn't got a top view assigned. You obviously don't want top views on grasses because it will take forever for them to draw thousands of top views, and it will also add to the memory use as well. So trying to render top views is going to take longer. So some things you don't want a top view assigned to, so it will just say top in that if there isn't one set. If I select a grass, you'll see what I mean. It should just say top on the grasses. So we select this one, properties. You can see, yeah, it says top down here, and you can also see the planting marker has been moved the correct depth at the base of the grass itself and in the center. Also, the all pass through has been set because you want the ball to be able to go through and not bounce off this grass. So, one more thing, you'll notice down here it's got apply current settings to all objects of this type and apply current settings to current selection. Well, when you set the object as you want, never click on this apply current settings to all objects, because what it will do is change every object in the category. So if you've got a tree, for instance, if I go back to the trees, if I've set this tree to 10 to 30, I've set the density, the dampening, how I want it. If I click on apply current settings, this will add the same settings to every pine tree in my collection. Now, sometimes that might sound like a good thing because you might want to change this minimum and maximum height and do it quickly for all of your objects. The problem is it will also change this top view, and it will assign this top view fur 9 to every object. So all your trees will have the same top view, and that's pretty disastrous. So I would never use this apply current settings to all objects of this type. Never tick that and click OK, because it's a good way to muck everything up. Just use the apply current settings if it's not grayed out and you've changed something. Just change it for that particular item only.